So I'm live on one. Might as well just go, right? Okay, we're good. How's it going, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Zahler Properties, episode 30. Wow, we've done 30 of these. Done probably half of them since I lost my partner in crime, Mike, on these. But yeah, it's Wednesday. It's the second day of spring, I think. So I'm in shorts. For those of you out there, yes, a real estate broker can wear shorts, can wear casual clothing and still do successful business out there. So never mind. Want to talk to you about a specific topic today. So if you have any questions on it, we're going to talk about appraisals and what we're seeing in our current market right now in regard to appraisals. A lot of times they are coming in low. So if you have any questions on an appraisal or what happens, please feel free to shoot a comment below or like us or anything like that. We'll make sure to get that question answered. But overall, I'll give you a kind of a background of why we decided to do this topic today. An appraisal obviously doesn't just affect the buyer, it also affects the seller. So it's anybody who's really looking at, who's in a contract right now, this is something that you need to concern yourself with a little bit. But no, there's not a lot that we can do other than just, prepare the right way. So what we're seeing in Las Vegas is the market is continuing to climb up as far as values. We know that it's been doing it for years, but even in the last 2 years or so, it's been going crazy. So there are currently, it seems like every sale out there is setting another record or another record or another record. So we see a market escalating the correct way. What we are seeing, though, is a lot of times these appraisals are actually coming in not where a seller or even a buyer would hope they're coming in. Just to use random fake numbers, say like a contract's at $300,000, everybody thinks the house is worth that, if not more, and all of a sudden you're seeing an appraisal come in at $280,000. Buyer's not going to come up 20 grand difference. Seller's not going to drop 20 grand. So we're running into these types of issues. So let's first talk about why we're seeing appraisals come in where they are, and then go from there. So, couple reasons. When we have an escalating market, people tend to price their house on what they think the house is going to be worth or what it should be worth with the movement they're seeing. So your neighbor that has the exact same house as you sells their house for $250,000. You look at your house and say, wow, my house is much nicer, so I could probably get $275,000. You may find a buyer that agrees with that and writes an offer. Everybody's happy. You think you're going to be making a lot of money. And then, boom, the appraisal comes in at $260, right? $255. The biggest issue is just it's a timing thing. So buyers and sellers and real estate agents are making this mistake, and I wouldn't say the mistake, but they're making this this commentary a lot, that they're pricing things based on where the market is going. The definition of an appraisal, if you will, is a price point of what has happened. So an appraisal has to look in the past, and the rest of the general public is looking at where things are going. So that's the biggest disconnect we have with appraisals and where the general market is heading. So we're often seeing this disconnect, if you will, of values of where a seller thinks the house is worth, a listing agent thinks the house is worth, and a buyer agrees that they're willing to pay that amount of money for it, versus an appraiser who says, okay, that's great, but based on the history we have that we can use, we don't see that. Appraisers will go back usually about 6 months as well. And we know in this market, when you're seeing double-digit increases in value over a yearly basis, 6 months can be a 5, 6, 7% difference in value. So, appraisers are under the assumption they do have the knowledge that they see the market going up, but their report, their livelihood, their insurance is all on the line. And when they have to use past values, aka sales, to be comparisons, you're already looking in the past when the rest of us are looking in the future. So that right there is the biggest disconnect. So we see that a lot. There's a few ways to combat that, but realistically, as I always tell our clients, both our buyers and our sellers, that an appraisal is literally one person's opinion of value on a specific home on a specific date, right? So that's, lenders rely on these to ensure that they are not lending too much money on a home. But really, when it comes down to it, this is not science. This is art. This is art that has some characteristics built in to make it feel a little bit more structured. But realistically, again, it's one person's opinion of value on one specific property the day of the inspection. So that's where you get a little bit of this disconnect. Pardon me. Now, an appraiser will look at some houses that are currently on the market or in contract, but they can't weight them as highly or as valuable as homes that have closed. So things to do here. First and foremost, if you are looking at listing your home and you feel like you need or want a bump in value, talking to an agent and getting a realistic price point of where you think you can sell the house is going to help, right? If you think that your market and your homes in your market are selling for $250,000, if you think you're going to have $300,000 or $350,000 to sell your house, you may have a buyer agree. But unless you have some pretty concrete evidence of why your home has a $50,000 or $100,000 premium over your neighbors, you're going to probably run into this. And what this means to you is you may try to sell the house, it may fall out of escrow, you may have to put it back on the market, it may happen again, and it's just this endless cycle that doesn't make anybody happy. And then on the flip side, if you're looking to buy, we're all seeing right now the market where people are getting kind of caught up in this frenzy, and realistically, sometimes agents can be just quick to write a contract for you. So make sure if you're in this, make sure your agent is running comparable sales for you. Make sure you have at least a general idea of what the market is selling for, because we know now not necessarily the appraisal will come in low, but there is this possibility. We've fallen, our clients have some of our clients have fallen into this lately as well, where we basically provide comps and then they say, hey, Jeff or, Misty or Jason, we agree with you, but we want the house, so we're going to write the offer for what they're asking for. So we'll always advise, but when it comes down to it, we work for our clients. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. We've had to cancel deals because the gap on what the house we think was worth and what they wrote the offer for, it just doesn't work. So that's the nutshell of appraisal. So again, this episode's about what do we do when or if the appraisal comes in low. So realistically, there are a handful of options. Some of them are easier to deal with than others. So option one, say like the appraisal comes in $30,000 low on anything and any price. Option one is the buyer comes all the way up, which we're actually seeing some sellers request that. I don't know if I necessarily would ever allow a client of ours to agree to do something like that because, again, remember, one person's value of the property that day. You can get really caught up with having to potentially come out of pocket a lot of money that you don't have or money that you couldn't afford. So option one, we're seeing the seller is expecting the buyer to come all the way up. Option two is the inverse of that. So option two is the seller coming all the way down to meet the appraised value. Again, we're not seeing that often, especially in such a strong seller's market here. So especially if the seller believes the appraisal was low or not a very good appraisal. So we're very rarely seeing that happen as well. The third option is what we're seeing the most of is at this point, if the appraisal comes in even $1 lower than the contract price, technically the buyer and seller with your agents, if you have an agent, are able to go back to the table and try to negotiate some type of price that was somewhere in the middle that works for both the buyer and seller. Now, it doesn't only have to be the price. You could start talking about other terms as well. Maybe the seller was going to offer seller credit to help with closing costs. Maybe they can reduce that. This kind of thing is what really where we see most of this happen, right? So Don't freak out if the appraisal does come in low. If you are buying or selling, it's not the end of the world. Hopefully, again, if a buyer and a seller both have similar interest in the home, the seller's committed to selling the home, the buyer's committed to buying the home, usually there can be a meeting of the minds. Now, if a value difference is so gigantic, it just, there's not going to be any room for it. We unfortunately had one here that the appraisal came in 10% below appraised value, or excuse me, 10% below our contracted price, which shocked me. I'm still kind of almost laughing at it. I looked at the appraisal, we argued the appraisal, we'll talk about that, and that didn't happen. So option 4, when an appraisal does come in low, is unfortunately it's one we don't love, but it's when you basically cancel the contract and move forward. Seller, can relist the home, buyer, back to square one, if you will, looking for another home that you may not have this type of issue with. Again, we don't see that a lot, especially because especially when we're working with our buyers and our sellers, we want to make sure that the home is priced in an appropriate environment. We think that if something does happen like this, it's going to be a very rare occurrence versus, hey, let's try to get every single penny for your property, or let's try to lowball an offer. So if you do have an issue where the appraisal comes in low, there are options and there are ways to try to fight it. Now, it is definitely an uphill fight. I'm not going to lie. The chance of success of getting an appraiser to change their value is pretty tough. But if you do feel like the appraisal was done in error, or they missed any glaring comparables that could have been used to help justify the value, talk to your agent, right? Talk to your agent. Make sure your agent is talking to the other agent and trying to work this together. At this point, it's not one side versus the other. It's, let's try to get a meeting of all parties, the buyer, the seller, buyer's agent, seller's agent, to put their heads together to see if there's anything they can do to combat this. Like I said, maybe the appraiser missed a couple glaring comparables. It happens. Maybe the appraiser didn't remember or didn't give value for the fact that the home has a pool or a spa. Things like that can be done. The way you do it is you go through and basically create a formal kind of request or presentation, usually some verbiage, a lot of times extra comparable sales, so extra MLS numbers if that helps, and then you submit it basically to the lender, who will then submit it to the appraisal management company, who will then send it to the appraiser. Sounds like there's a lot of tiers involved, which there are. The appraiser then will take a look at the appraisal, and then they will submit their rebuttal or what have you. Sometimes they'll adjust the price, sometimes they won't. I do say this is an uphill battle because if you think about it, an appraiser is a professional, right? This is somebody that is done, this is what they do professionally. And, I don't know about you all out there watching this, but when I'm told I, as a professional, am not doing something right, and can you please look at it again? I'll look at it, but am I going to look at it with a happy face? Probably not. Anybody who tells me, hey, Jeff, you didn't price this house the right way, or you didn't show the house the right way, can you relook at it? I'll do it, but I'm going to have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. And, I'm going to have a harder time agreeing with you than that, especially if I came up with a solution with numbers involved. So, appraisals, they can get altered. I do say it is an uphill battle. The good news is, generally speaking, if the buyer's agent and the seller's agent collaborate and get something packaged together to send off to the lender, you should usually hear within 48 hours what the resolve is. So it's not like this is a week's kind of thing, this is a day's kind of thing. But even when you're doing that, it's time and it's under advisement that definitely you should be talking to your agent about what if, right? So what if this doesn't happen? Where should we go? Should we start looking for new homes yet? Should we wait? And all that stuff, and it really depends on your time frame and what you need to do, because realistically, when the appraisal does come in low and it's one that you can't meet together somewhere in the middle, that there could be an uphill battle there. So we are seeing it again. Like I said, we're seeing appraisals hit a little bit lower than we would expect, and that's really because the market is going so quickly. And again, just the idea of an appraisal, remember, an appraisal is one person's value of the home the day of the appraisal, and it is based on past sales. So, until we can get some kind of better solution that's more timely out there, you're going to have these issues. My joke internally is always the houses that I worry about the appraisal on usually come in fine. The houses that I don't think twice about as far as having them appraised are usually the ones that come in low. So go figure. We had one just yesterday that we're selling. We knew we were a little bold on the price, but not horribly bold. Let's put it this way: I wouldn't have been surprised if the appraisal came in $5,000-$10,000 lower, but it came in at value, completely fine, no issues whatsoever. So the good news is I got to deliver that great news to our seller, and the buyer and the buyer's agent were happy because they knew there was one less thing to worry about as far as the negotiation is concerned, and we'll be able to close that one here next week. So. I wouldn't say I lost sleep over that one, but again, that was one that I kind of figured you may run into some issues. A couple other ones lately, especially ones that we were selling that we were got over list price offers. I was thinking, okay, the worst case scenario, maybe the appraisal comes in at that list value. Those came in fine. So guess what? Our sellers got on each of those deals an extra $10,000 or so of equity because the appraisal actually hit the value. So. Again, I always say an appraisal is an art. It's not a science, just like our business is an art with a lot of math, but it's definitely an art. So if you have any appraisal questions or want to know why some things would come in where they do, please let us know. If you're thinking about selling your house and don't want to deal with this, talking to a professional that really knows the market and can give you concrete evidence of what has happened, and you can make small adjustments, not leaps and bounds, that's probably your best bet of not running into any appraisal issue. But again, at the end of the day, it is an art. It is not a science. And that's why having a professional like myself and my team here to help walk you through things like this is so valuable. Doing it alone, you don't have anyone to turn to. You don't have anywhere to pull comparable sales for and all that stuff. And it does become a huge headache. And we've seen a lot of for sale by owners run into this issue and then just kind of relent and drop their price, which is not a good thing. They're leaving equity on the table. So that's it for episode 30. Thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, please let us know, and we'll talk to you all next week. Until then, take care.